Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, when you're just a kid and the state takes away your parents.
There's a very big possibility that mommy might not come home today. And so, this is kind of what our new dynamic is going to look like.
As the Trump administration continues its policy of mass deportations, what happens to the children left behind? I'm Natasha DelToro, and this is The Take.
My name is Mariana Blanco, and I am the Director of Operations at the Guatemalan-Maya Center. We are located in Lake Worth, Florida, in West Palm Beach.
Mariana, I'm so glad you're with us. We're just starting to hear all of these stories about children, unaccompanied minors that are getting caught up in a system at 6, 7, 8 years old that they cannot be prepared to deal with.
President Trump's deportations are drawing controversy once again. This time, 3 children, all U.S. citizens, have been forcibly removed from the U.S. with their migrant mothers and sent to Honduras.
As the Trump administration continues this aggressive deportation policy that we're seeing, we're hearing about many different ways that kids are being affected. I know that you work closely with immigrant families in Florida, where you've seen firsthand what this is doing to children. Maybe you could start by telling us the story of one of them. Tell us about Amilcar, a 12-year-old boy. Was he born in the U.S. or was he born in Guatemala?
He was born in Guatemala. He had only been here for a year.
What happened to him?
So we were contacted by Amilcar's school staff because they had this child who wasn't picked up. They couldn't contact his dad. They couldn't contact the next couple of people on his emergency contact list. And they came to find out later in the day that his dad had been detained on his way to work. The school was kind of at a loss. They didn't really know how to move forward from there. And so we worked with them, contacting the emergency contact, the final one. And he was very adamant that he could not take the child. Like, he was willing to pick him up from school, but he couldn't live with him. He was a single man, living with other working men. And his worry was, I don't even know if my landlord's going to allow me to bring this child in. I'm not equipped to take care of this child. I work every day. I don't know how to take care of a child. And it was, very real fears that he was expressing. And so with that, we just kind of took him step by step. We will work as fast as we can. The goal is going to be to reunite Amilcar with his family in home country. But if you would just help us in these next couple of weeks to give him housing, otherwise this child is going to have nowhere else to go. And he agreed to that and pressured us every day after that to make sure that we were working as diligently and as quickly to complete that reunification.
And just to be clear, Mariana, what does your organization do? I mean, dealing with detained and deported parents and reconnecting families, that's not even like the main thing that you guys do. Is that right?
No. Our services vary depending on what's happening in the community at large. So, we have a food bank, we have after-school programs for children of day laborers, we have early literacy programs, and then our outreach program, which does a little bit of everything: wage theft, domestic violence. I mean, whatever the community needs, that's what we do. And so right now, the community needs support through this, awful immigration system. And so that's what we're doing.
Did his father have some sort of criminal history, or why was the father deported?
He hadn't been deported at that point. He was detained, correct. And he had no prior criminal history. He was stopped. As we know, law enforcement in general is targeting any work vehicles. And so that's what he was in. He was with 6 other guys, and they were all taken in that day.
I'm just thinking this poor little kid at school has no idea, the ways in which his life is about to change.
Yeah, what's horrible about this story is that our center had prepared for something like this. We had already contacted the Guatemalan consulate. That's primarily where our families are from. We just hadn't, put it into practice. Now we were actually having to use all of our contacts, all of our tools to try to get this child to safety, to get him reunited as soon as possible. And so that's kind of what we did, and we just went from there.
How was Amilcar feeling when you spoke with him?
Amilcar is just a child that you automatically fall in love with. I mean, anywhere he walked in, it just felt like he was the mayor of that town, like, hi to everybody, And so it was bittersweet because he is this cheerful, uplifting kind of personality, but he also recognizes that his dad is detained, his mom is in Guatemala, and he's just kind of living with this person who's actually not his legal guardian. And every single day he asked the school staff that was helping, oh, am I going to go home tomorrow? Am I going to go home tomorrow? He knew that we were helping with that reunification process. We weren't actually sure if it was going to work, but thankfully it worked the way that it did for him.
And so you all were able to connect with the consulate in Guatemala and make arrangements for him to get on a plane and fly back to his family. I was really struck by the video that I saw of this little boy with a suitcase that was bigger than him, basically. Yeah. And he couldn't even really figure out how to get on the escalator. I mean, I understand this was the first time he was flying.
Yes, this was the first time he was flying. And I think this was the first time that he was on an escalator. We had a little bit of time to wait. And so he was just riding the escalator up and down for a little while until he got comfortable with it.
I mean, I just can't even imagine, like, remembering back to being that age and being by yourself and having to navigate international travel alone, and locate his father. I mean, I just feel like there's also so many things that could go wrong.
Yeah, and we were completely aware of that. So while we were walking through the airport, I kept going through the steps with him. I'm like, what document are you going to pull out when you pass immigration, when you arrive? And where's the emergency contact for the Guatemalan consulate? And where's this located? Where's your dad's number? Like, all of these things. But the moment that he had to get on the plane, when he realized I was no longer going to be able to go with him, all of a sudden he started, okay, where did you say the emergency contact was for the Guatemalan consulate? What document did you say I need to? And so it was quite terrifying. So much so that a woman that was sitting in the waiting area overheard us talking, and she said, hey, I could, keep an eye on him on the plane. I can help him in immigration if you need. And so all of a sudden now he latched onto that person and was like, will you take me if my dad doesn't show up? Like, it was like a lot of real fears, and he was just putting on a brave face. But all of us were, heartbroken for him that he had to go through this alone.
I can only imagine. It sounds like he got very lucky that there was somebody there who would kind of help him. So he made it. He made it home to his family. So in that case, there was a decent outcome. But we know that there's, this is just one case of many that you're dealing with.
Yes. Unfortunately, realistically, we're just not reaching the amount of people who are being affected. And even when we are, it depends, on whether or not there's a consulate here in the States for that country, like if they're willing to cooperate with us, like what, if the family in home country is willing to cooperate, because his mom, Amilcar's mom, had to travel hours with an interpreter to get to that consulate. And even still, they weren't, willing to work with her. So we had to call the consulate here to get in touch with the consulate there to get the paperwork done. So if we don't have that connection with the consulates, or if somebody else that's not our agency is doing that and they don't have, the contacts, what do those kids do? Right now, we're working with two other little ones, 6 and 3 years old, and they're Honduran natives. And I mean, we have just had the hardest time reaching the Honduran consulate. And dad is detained, mom is in home country, and they're living with non-relatives right now. So it becomes really difficult, depending on the situation.
And Mariana, so you're just telling us the case of 3 kids that you've seen recently, but we know that there were close to 800 people that were picked up in Florida just last week. And then ICE has reported removing roughly 57,000 since Trump took office. I know that Not all of these are undocumented. We know that because the arresting officers have been making mistakes in picking up residents and U.S. citizens. It just stands to reason that there's going to be a lot of kids that are impacted by this. Kids left behind, like Amilcar, for example. And in fact, we just heard about the case of a woman, a Cuban woman in Florida that was picked up, leaving behind her infant she was still breastfeeding.
I went with my child, and when it was time to enter the line, they took me to our room. There, they gave me the terrible news that our daughter had to stay and that I would be deported. Then I started crying. I begged, I pleaded. My daughter got nervous and agitated and began to ask for milk. And I told them, look, she is asking me to breastfeed her. She still breastfeeds. But it didn't matter to them.
I don't even know, is this legal to deport a mother that's breastfeeding? There's also the story of a 4-year-old boy that's been all over the headlines.
In the case of the 4-year-old, lawyers say the child has a rare form of cancer and was removed from this country without medication.
He was deported to Honduras with his mother, where he's not taking any medication with him. He was actually born in the U.S. Are you seeing cases like this?
Yes. Yeah, we are. I mean, every single case that you've mentioned, we have here in our center. And so we're not just hearing it from the sidelines. Right before this call, I was sitting with a woman whose husband was picked up Friday night, and she was holding her 3-month-old baby. And this is a guy who has a valid work permit, a valid driver's license. He's in the legal process of asylum. And all he was doing was going to work. Most of these cases, majority of these cases, don't even have criminal records. And so, this whole narrative that they're only picking up criminals, that's just completely untrue. And it's leaving a lot of children in very vulnerable positions.
More from Mariana after the break. Before we continue today's show, I wanted to talk to you about Hindsight, a dramatized history show from Al Jazeera podcast. We have a season 7 beginning on Wednesday, May 7th. But in the meantime, you can catch up with season 6 right here on the Al Jazeera YouTube podcast tab and listen to all the other seasons wherever you get your podcasts. Here's a preview of season 7.
I want to sing, Hassan. That's all I want.
Hindsight, a dramatized history podcast from Al Jazeera.
Have you seen what the British have done? They have stabbed us in the back.
I'm your narrator, Charles Dance. In season 7, we meet people from the Arab world, including dynastic leaders.
I was in my early 20s and running Egypt.
Under my rule, Muslims will retake our lands from foreign invaders.
And artists, like the famed French-Algerian writer Albert Camus.
There is something deeply absurd about the search for meaning.
At that moment, I was no longer Amal al-Atrash. I became Asmahan.
Egypt's sisters in crime.
We were mere spectators who provided food and drinks.
We're not killers.
You've heard of them.
My name is pronounced Salah ad-Din.
I am Shagarat ad-Dur, Sultana of Egypt.
Now it's time to hear from them.
You may call me Faisal.
My name is Raya Ali Hammam.
I am Skin Ali Hammam.
Hindsight, a dramatized history podcast from Al Jazeera. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So Mariana, let's talk about Florida a little bit more. Now, I'm actually from Florida. I'm usually based there, and I've done a lot of reporting in Florida. But, just in recent months, things have changed drastically. I know that Trump's administration policies are threatening immigrants, but also the governor, Ron DeSantis, has cracked down on migrants.
We here in Florida have a responsibility to be strong partners with the Trump administration as it seeks to restore the rule of law, remove illegal aliens from our communities, and protect public safety. Today, the Florida legislature has passed the strongest legislation to combat illegal immigration of any state in the entire country.
I mean, it's wild too in Florida, a place that relies so much on immigrant labor, that we're seeing these sort of massive sweeps that are taking place and families that are being separated. It's also important to mention that just nationwide, there's more than roughly 6 million people who live with an undocumented family member. What does it feel like to be there right now with the communities that you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely somber, and we've had multiple raids in our own community, and we're constantly seeing Border Patrol in our area, policing our neighborhood. We see them just waiting in front of construction sites, and so we'll go and give, know your rights cards to workers. We'll just see them waiting for people to get out of work, essentially. But it just is a horrible time to live in. Like, all of the families that are considered collateral damage are real people. When you have a mother who's sitting with her infant child crying because her husband, the only source of income in their family, was just taken in, and they don't have answers. Like, we've done everything right. We've done everything that's been asked of us. We work jobs that nobody else wants to work. We have a valid work permit, have a valid driver's license. We've never broken any rule. Like, what did we do wrong? You are poor, you are brown. Like, there's no real answer to what you have done wrong, right? And so that is the really hard part to kind of grapple with. It seems like, following the law has gone out the window now. And so even when there is, like, the law is supposed to protect you, we're seeing that it no longer protects you. So how do we as an agency now provide that support and that advice to families? Like, it's kind of, anybody's game right now.
There's a lot of outdoor labor, construction, agriculture. I mean, I think there's something like 2 million people, outdoor workers, and a lot of them are Hispanic. So these are the people that are being rounded up, people doing those hard jobs. How are you seeing that it affects people's day-to-day lives? Are they able to go to work? Are they sending their kids to school?
Yeah, certainly school attendance has decreased. In terms of jobs, like, people have to survive, right? They still have to feed their families. And so it's not like they get the day off and still get paid if they don't go to work. Like, if they don't go to work, they don't get paid. And so it's kind of like the harsh reality that, like, what you're in for. Like, that you might not come home that day, but you still have to do it. Like, you have to do whatever you have to do to keep your family alive.
And what are you seeing in the impact on children?
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, there's a very big possibility that mommy might not come home today. And so, this is kind of what our new dynamic is going to look like. If mom doesn't come home, you're going to have to stay with, your tia, like, all of these things that they might not have had to think about before. It's just horrible. And, we know that there's been kids who have committed suicide over this, like over the bullying and the very real thought. And, even with our own teammates, we hire from within the community. And so we've had to Baker Act some of our own staff because they themselves have had such a hard time dealing with that reality for their own families.
And again, we know that this can have long-term effects, long-term outcomes, negative outcomes on these children. Now, this all follows the child separation policies of the first Trump administration. We all remember those images of children being separated from their parents. What is your advice to parents? Should they try to bring their kids with them when they're deported? Can they bring their kids with them, or is there some place safe that they can take them?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. We have a lot of mixed status families. And so for many of the kids, they don't even know what that country looks like. Like, this is their home. And, having to make that decision for them on whether or not you should take your children. Unfortunately, they are conversations that we've been having. And the best advice that we could offer is telling them, the potential consequences of making that decision both ways. Like, we are absolutely suggesting to have not just a power of attorney ready with, legal naming someone your legal guardian, but also that safety plan. If you are detained, you have 60 seconds to tell that person on the other line of the phone everything they need to know about who is caring for your children. So in that 60 seconds, you better be ready to tell somebody, go in my room, in between the mattresses, there's a green folder. That green folder should have all of their birth certificates, parents' documents, medical records, power of attorney, phone number for home country, just making sure that they can be as prepared for the separation as possible, because it's no longer a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens. And when it happens, you better have a plan for your kids.
Well, that's definitely a scary way to live, right? Day to day, when you're here trying to work and have a better life for your kids. I mean, so you're describing some very intense stories that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Mariana, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's certainly not easy. And, we have an ongoing joke at the center that's not so much even a joke because it constantly happens. But if you need a 5-minute cry session, just have your 5-minute cry session. But yeah, it really becomes difficult, especially when you're trying to put on a brave face for that mother whose world is falling apart.
What kind of future do you imagine now for Amilcar being in a remote village in Guatemala? Have you heard from him?
I was in communication with him and his dad for a couple of days after he was reunited, but they live in a very rural area. We lost contact with them for about a month, and just last night, his sister tried to reach me, saying Amilcar, really wanted to talk to me, but unfortunately, we were not able to establish that communication because he's in a different city and it just didn't work out. I hope for Amilcar the very best. I mean, he is just such a wonderful, wonderful child. And he expressed before leaving that his one sadness of, leaving was going to be that he didn't get to fulfill his dream. And that dream was to study. And so, in Guatemala, unfortunately, after the 6th grade, school is not free anymore. And if you live in a very rural area, it's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to afford schooling. So I am just hopeful that he's able to continue his dream of studying. And he knows he'll always have friends here to support him.
Wow. Mariana, thank you so much for coming on and telling us these stories. I mean, these are the real actual people behind some of these numbers, these statistics that we see. So thank you for sharing these stories with us. It's important that people know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And that's The Take. If you want to catch more episodes like this, make sure you're following our YouTube playlist. That's where you're going to find all of our recent content updated regularly so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so you stay in the loop with all things Al Jazeera English. See you tomorrow.